Good morning, I'm Taylor Wilson, and today is Friday, February 16th, 2024. This is The Excerpt. Today, what a dramatic Fani Willis hearing might mean for Trump's election fraud case in Georgia. Plus, an FBI informant has been charged with lying over Hunter and Joe Biden business dealings. And we discuss the greatness of Iowa basketball star Caitlin Clark. There were plenty of fireworks at yesterday's hearing over whether Fulton County District Attorney Fani Willis should be disqualified from the Georgia election fraud case against former President Donald Trump and 14 others.
Well, it's highly offensive when someone lies on you, and it's highly offensive when they try to implicate that you slept with somebody the first day you met with them, and I take exception to it.
Inside the court yesterday was USA Today domestic security correspondent Josh Meyer. I caught up with him to put the hearing in context. Josh, thank you for hopping on The Excerpt today.
My pleasure, Taylor.
So, Josh, let's just start here. Can you remind us what exactly is at issue in these election interference hearings this week?
So, Fani Willis, the Fulton County District Attorney, is fighting for her political life. She's also fighting for what is by far the biggest case of her career, which is the election interference case in which she initially indicted 19 people, including former President Donald Trump, in an alleged effort to criminally overthrow the results of the 2020 election and allow him to remain as president, even though Joe Biden won the election. 4 of those defendants have pled out, but 15 remain, including Trump. And so the lawyers for some of those defendants are trying to get Willis thrown off the case. They're trying to get her special prosecutor, Nathan Wade, thrown off the case because of an affair that the two had in recent years. And they're also trying to disqualify the entire Fulton County DA's office and have the case dismissed because of what they say are improper personal relationships between Wade and Willis.
And Josh, you were there in the Atlanta courtroom yesterday. Fani Willis herself ended up testifying. We also heard from Nathan Wade. What was the scene like, and what did we learn from these testimonies?
So there was a lot of fireworks. Wade was pretty calm and low-key, answered questions in a very lawyer-like way, as one legal observer put it. But Willis came in loaded for bear. I mean, she marched into the courtroom, or she said ran into the courtroom. And despite efforts by her lawyers and the Fulton County District Attorney's Office to quash the subpoena so she wouldn't have to testify, she barged right in there and said she wanted to talk, she wanted to set the record straight, and she basically went right at the defense lawyers, calling it lies that they were trying to allege that she and Wade had an affair that started before she picked him as the special prosecutor in the case, that he used some of the proceeds of this more than $650,000 that he's been paid as the lead prosecutor in the case to take her on romantic vacations. And she basically tried to refute it all and said that there was nothing to it. And so did Wade.
And Josh, as for Donald Trump, we know he separately appeared in court yesterday in New York over his hush money case. Has he spoken out about this Willis hearing?
He did. He posted some stuff on Truth Social. Not surprisingly, he said that this means the whole case should be thrown out, game over, I think is what he called it on Truth Social. So yes, he's watching carefully and he's hoping the whole case gets thrown out because of these alleged improprieties. Nobody I've talked to said that that's going to happen. There's a chance if the judge believes that they have tainted the case by having their affair, which they both agreed to now that they did have an affair. But if he thinks that there was a continuing effort for them to keep the case going so that they could financially benefit from it, he might disqualify some or all of the prosecutors in the office, especially Willis, and hand the case over to a state governing board, which would then figure out what to do with it, probably try to give it to another DA's office around the state.
Josh, we have another day in court today for the Fani Willis proceedings. What can we expect?
So today, I think there's going to be some more fireworks. Willis will get back on the stand. In this case, she'll be cross-examined by prosecutors. It'll be a friendly cross-examination, of course, where they'll try to help her give answers that bolster her case that she did nothing wrong and that Nathan Wade did nothing wrong. She's even bringing in her father to testify remotely from California to talk about this. I mean, one of the issues is whether or not Nathan Wade, the special prosecutor, cohabitated with Fani Willis in a apartment that she was renting essentially as a safe house because of threats she'd been receiving, and whether if Wade stayed there with her in an official cohabitation status, then technically he's benefiting financially from their relationship. So they're expected to refute that tomorrow. I'm sure Willis will come back at the prosecutors again. But yesterday it was very, very heated. She was basically telling them to let her finish her answers, not to yell at her. She was calling it lies. I mean, she was very, very upset.
Josh Meyer covers domestic security for USA Today. Thank you, Josh.
Sure, always a pleasure.
A former FBI informant has been indicted by a Justice Department special counsel for allegedly lying about President Joe Biden and his son Hunter Biden's overseas business dealings. It's a setback for House Republicans' impeachment inquiry of the president. Alexander Smirnov was charged with 2 counts of making a false statement and creating a false record for information that he fed the FBI. He was arrested on Wednesday at the Las Vegas airport. He's accused of falsely claiming that executives of Ukrainian energy firm Burisma admitted to him in 2015 and 2016 that they hired Hunter Biden to protect them through his dad from a number of problems. Hunter Biden was a Burisma board member. House Republicans had previously cited Smirnov's story about Hunter Biden's business dealings in their impeachment inquiry of President Joe Biden. The charges against Smirnov were brought by the same special counsel who previously brought tax and gun-related charges against Hunter Biden. We're learning more about the shooting that broke out during the Super Bowl victory celebrations in Kansas City this week. Authorities said yesterday that a personal dispute between several people erupted in gunfire, injuring more than 20 and killing a mother of 2. Nearly 1 million people were estimated to have been in downtown Kansas City on Wednesday when gunshots sent people running for cover. 22 people in all were wounded, and police said about half of the victims were under the age of 16. Police told USA Today that they detained 3 juveniles, but released 1 who they determined was not involved. You can read more with a link in today's show notes. Half of black adult gamers in the U.S. say they were harassed last year, according to an annual report compiled by the Anti-Defamation League. That marked a 19-point increase since the anti-hate group's 2020 survey. Additionally, 48% of female gamers reported being harassed because of their gender in 2023, slightly up from the previous year. The study found that exposure to white supremacist ideologies decreased from 2022 to 2023. But those who encountered it did so at alarming rates, the study said, experiencing it at least weekly. As for what the companies are doing about these issues, Daniel Kelly, the ADL Center's Director of Strategy and Operations, says that some game companies in the wake of George Floyd's murder in 2020 issued statements in support of the Black Lives Matter movement and some pledged to donate to nonprofits. But he said that very few committed to explicitly addressing anti-black hate in their online games. You can read more with a link in today's show notes. Put Caitlin Clark in the history books. The Iowa Star passed Kelsey Plum last night to become the top women's college basketball scorer of all time. She entered the game against Michigan needing just 8 points for the record, and then in typical Caitlin Clark fashion, she scored 49, also setting a school and personal single-game record in the process. For more, I spoke with USA Today Sports national correspondent Lindsay Schnell on the greatness of Caitlin Clark. Lindsay, thanks for hopping on the Excerpt today.
Hey, of course. Thanks for having me. Always happy to talk women's basketball.
So, Lindsay, we've been waiting for this potential moment for months. Just how big of a deal is this record?
Kelsey Plum's record has stood since 2017, and it was hard to know when she broke it how long it would take for someone else to come along. And then suddenly here is this 6-foot skinny point guard from Des Moines, Iowa, who just starts lighting up scoreboards early in her career. She has done more than just score more points than any woman in NCAA history. She has brought a new level of fanaticism to the game. And I think she's made a lot of people into women's basketball fans, which, as someone who has loved this game for my entire life, I love seeing not just all the little girls, but all the little boys who show up to games in Caitlin Clark jerseys.
Yeah, so Lindsay, she is also on track to break the men's record set by Pete Maravich. What's the latest there? Can you talk about that?
Yeah, so I think that is one of the coolest milestones that Caitlin could pass, because Pete Maravich, who played at LSU from 1967 to 1970, he scored 3,667 points in just 3 years. Everyone used to call him Pistol Pete. Well, people like to call Caitlin Clark Ponytail Pete because of her ability, like Maravich, to score, to involve teammates, court vision, spectacular. That record has stood for more than 50 years. So Caitlin is on pace to break that. It should happen toward the end of the regular season, maybe in the Big Ten tournament. And to have a woman pass that record, I know he only said it in 3 years, but I think that that's just really, really exciting for women's sports, that there is so much scoring right now. Caitlin is leading that charge, that she is the biggest name in college basketball, regardless of gender, is a good thing, especially as we head into the NCAA tournament.
You know, Lindsay, Iowa games have really become one of the hottest tickets in sports. Can you talk about that a bit and this Caitlin Clark phenomenon? What does this tell us about Clark's impact and legacy on the sport?
ESPN analyst Debbie Antonelli, I think, has the best word for this: Clarkonomics. The economic impact of Caitlin Clark coming to your town. You're going to sell a lot of tickets. You're going to sell a lot of parking. You're going to sell a lot of concessions. For every game that Caitlin Clark plays, whether it's on the road or at home, there is a line out the door 2 or 3 hours before tip-off because everyone is excited to watch her play. It's the whole thing about a rising tide lifts all boats, right? I fully expect that whenever she goes to the WNBA, that attendance is going to continue to rise in women's basketball because of the impact she has had and the eyes she has brought to the game.
And as for Caitlin Clark beyond the college game, you mentioned WNBA. What is next for her after this year?
That's a great question. No one seems to know. Caitlin is part of the last, what we call the COVID class in the NCAA. Because COVID was still going strong her freshman year at Iowa, if she wants it, she has a 5th year of eligibility. So she could come back next year, take this scoring record to new heights. She could also go to the WNBA. If she goes to the WNBA, she is projected to be the number 1 pick, which would go to the Indiana Fever. They had last year's number 1 pick and the Rookie of the Year. So she would be paired up with a post player who's fantastic. And then there's also the Olympic team. And there are thoughts that Caitlin could make the Olympic roster and play in Paris this summer.
All right, Lindsay, Schnell, exciting times. Thanks for your time on this. Really appreciate it.
Of course.
Thanks for listening to The Excerpt. We're produced by Shannon Ray Green, and our executive producer is Laura Beatty. And thanks to producer Bradley Glansrock for his work on the show. You can get the podcast wherever you get your audio, and if you're on a smart speaker, just ask for The Excerpt. I'm Taylor Wilson, back tomorrow with more of The Excerpt from USA Today.